Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we're going to be creating a whole bunch of cards and a couple of envelopes as well using my Puppy Love paper pad. So this is on sale now. I will leave a link in the description box down below to my Etsy shop where you can find lots of different paper pads including this one. So the card design that we're going to be following in this video is another one by Call Me Crafty Owl, and this is her Sheetload of cards. So this one is from March 2023. So I went back to sort of find a design that I thought would be quite nice with these papers, and I picked out this one here for March. So her cards and dimensions are to create the US A2 sized cards. I've changed the dimensions on here to fit our cards and to fit our A6 cards, and my cards do measure 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches, so I just kind of changed the measurements there just a little bit. But yeah, if you're interested in these, then head over to Call Me Crafty Owl's YouTube channel again, or TikTok or Instagram. Yeah, we're going to use up some of this. So for our cards I am using 2 sheets of patterned paper. I believe it was 2 sheets of A4 coloured cardstock, and then we have got our 8 card bases. So you can cut all of this from your sheets of patterned paper in these packs. I do end up creating another set of cards using a couple of the other papers in here, which I will show you at the end. But without further ado, let's get into creating these cards using our Puppy Love paper pad. Okay, so let's get into creating our cards. So I'm going to do all of the cutting here on screen. I'm going to make one of the cards and then I'm going to show you them all together at the end. So the first thing I did was decided which papers I wanted to pair together. So I'm going to be creating, like I said, 2 lots of cards using these papers, but these are the 2 that I picked first of all. I thought they worked really nicely together. We've got that much busier pattern and those really lovely hearts here as well. So what you're going to see me cutting on screen is going to be different to what I've got written on the screen. If you're going to follow these card designs, please follow what I've written rather than what I'm actually doing in the video, because I did change, and you'll see this at the end, I changed the measurements to scale up a little bit more just to fit our cards even better. So with our first piece, which is going to be our strip along the bottom, you want to cut the width of the A4 sheet to 5 1/4 inch, and then you're going to cut this into 1 1/4 inch strips. You should, I'm fairly certain that you should be able to get all of these out of your A4 sheet, and we're creating 8 cards here as well. So we've got our strips for the bottom. So now we can do our squares and rectangles, which is our pieces for the top of our card. So I'm cutting these into strips to begin with. So I've left the width the same, but we're cutting these into 2 1/4 inch strips here. And then basically I'm just going to cut these down into the 3 sizes. So we've got 2 inch by 2 1/4 inch, 1 3/4 inch by 2 1/4 inch, and then we have 1 inch by 2 1/4 inch. So I basically just cut these strips and see what I can get out of it. I do manage to get all of the pieces. You will see with my second set of cards that I had to bring in, I think it was 4 additional squares and rectangles to finish these cards off. That was only because I'd cut them wrong to begin with. I cut them too big when I was trying to scale it up for the second time. So you should be able to get all of your pieces out of these strips, but yeah, I had to bring in extra literally just because I cut them wrong to begin with. But I just used then some of the scraps, and again you'll see that and I'll explain that at the end of the video. But I pretty much just went through, sort of cut a bunch of them at the one size. Then it was really just what I could get out of a strip, so I didn't kind of do all of the 2s to begin with, and then all of the middle ones, and then all of the 1 inch ones. I just kind of altered it a little bit, to be honest, until I had enough pieces. Like I said, you want 8 of each. And then for cutting our background panels, this is our matten layer that we're going to stick our patterned paper onto. So these are measuring 5 1/2 by 3 3/4, and you'll get 4 of these out of one A4 sheet. So you want 2 sheets to do all 8 of your cards, and then basically we're going to use the scraps from this. You should have enough, I believe. If you don't, you might need to bring in a little bit more coloured card, and then we're going to do just that band that's going to go across our patterned paper with a join, and this measures 5 1/2 inches by 3/4 inch, but a really great way then of using up your scrap paper. So I think the longest bit of these cards really is just cutting your pieces down. Once you know the sizes that you need to cut to, it really doesn't take that long at all, but it's definitely just the probably the more consuming part of these makes. But then once you get into actually creating your cards, I am going to create a first one, like I said, just here on screen so you can see how it goes together. But after that, I basically just do an assembly line, and I do stick one bit down for all of the cards, then stick another bit down for all of the cards, and really just go with it like that. I find that to be the quickest and easiest way of creating a batch of cards. So I'm also going to add a sentiment. I've got this fuchsia pink cardstock here, and I've got the Paper Rose Hello die. This does have a shadow die on here as well, which I would normally use, but I really didn't want to cover up any of that patterned paper. I wanted to use as much of it as possible and for you to see as much of it as possible. So I just used the Hello die. So just die cutting all of those, 8 of them. I'm just using my mini Gemini. This is really great for just churning out dies like this. If it's a lot smaller, then it just takes so much longer to go through my electric one. So now I've got all of my pieces together. I'm just going to fold up my card bases. So even though I'm technically making A6 cards here, so I just change up my paper ever so slightly, because you can get 2 card bases from an A4 sheet rather than having just those like 7/8 of an inch or whatever the measurements turn out to be. I decided to cut mine down just a little further, but these will still work perfectly for your cards. So my cards measure 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches, just because it simply makes those measurements a little bit easier just to work out your mats and layers. So I'm going to first start by gluing down my matte layer, so my grey layer. And you can see on this one, I've got a slightly bigger border between my card base and my grey background panel. So in my next cards, and again, I'll explain this when you see all the cards together, I decided to make it bigger just to have that as 1/4 of an inch on there. So I glued on my patterned strip at the bottom, and then I added my 2 outside pieces, because then I could line that up with the outside and where my strip is sat to make sure I get it all lined up nicely. And then I can add my centerpiece and just make sure I get a nice even gap between all of those panels. Then we're going to add the strip. So I decided just to leave this bit in, just so you can see that, you know, sometimes we make choices and then, you know, we don't want to go with that choice basically. So I added a few, and luckily I just put 3 of these onto this strip, so it's easy to take back off. So I added some foam onto the back of my strip because I wanted to add a little dimension. I do think maybe a card needs at least one little bit of dimension, but then obviously I wanted to put my hello onto here, but I realized then that it was just going to be kind of hanging off the strip a little bit, so it wasn't going to be secure. And because I didn't have that shadow layer, it was just going to kind of float around on there and not look particularly good. So I took that back off and then just simply attach that with some glue, and then I glued the sentiment. There was no way that I was going to cut tiny bits of foam to add the sentiment up. Maybe I probably would have done that if I'd added the shadow layer onto this, but yeah, I was like, I'm not fussing about with that, so I'm just going to glue it flat onto the card. So sometimes it's nice to have flat cards. I do think cards need to have a little bit of dimension, so I am going to add some Nuvo drops onto here, but I absolutely love how these cards look. These papers I think are so much fun. I love how bright. I've gone with obviously quite a subtle colour for my pattern, for my coloured card rather, so I went with a grey just to really let those colours be like bold and be what stands out. For the next ones, I do use an orange, like a nice bright orange, and I think that works just as well. So it doesn't matter which way you go, whether you go subtle or bold, it'll work nicely with these papers. So I did try to put a heart, make a heart out of my Nuvo drops, but it didn't really work. So I just went with 3 simple Nuvo drops to finish off these cards. So here is our finished cards that you just saw me put one together there, and I did the rest of them off screen. So I do really love how all of these came out. They all are virtually exactly the same here, but again, like I've said this before, you're not necessarily going to send 2 people in the same household the same card. So, you know, you can make cards that are all exactly the same, and it really doesn't matter at all. So I went with a grey, just to be kind of something subtle, and then obviously we had the nice hello there to stand out, and then I just added some yellow Nuvo drops. But I think these all work so nicely together. They're a real great fun set of cards. I love how bright and colourful they are. Yeah, I just think they make the most fun cards. I really love this paper pad. It's not, even though it came out with the other the Valentine's Day themed papers. It really doesn't scream Valentine's Day at all. You can see we've got hello cards here, and they work really, really perfectly. And I really love this dark dog in here just to break up some of that colour a little bit with something a little bit dark. So yeah, these were the first cards that I created, and now I want to show you the second cards, the second set of cards, following the exact same design, but what I did do was just to change a couple of the measurements a little bit, just so they fitted on the card a little better. So this is what I did with sort of hair measurements, bringing them down, and you've got a much wider border around the outside of this, but I figured normally obviously I do 1/4 of an inch down, and I thought, well, this is just the white of the card. I want to get as much patterned paper and coloured paper on here as possible, so I did decide to make it bigger, and then that's where I got these cards from. I much prefer it because you've got a smaller border of your card base, and again it just gives way to a little bit more of that patterned paper. So I went with an orange with this one, just something bolder, you know, because I went with something quite simple with this one, with the grey, just to let that patterned paper stand out, but I did decide to go with something a little bit bolder for this. I just had a simple happy birthday stamp onto there, but the one thing I did do was I cut out, let me just show you, from this piece of patterned paper here. So obviously you can use this as a patterned paper, but also look at some of these images and that and see what you can fussy cut. So let's move these ones out of the way, and you can see that each of these have got one of these really, really cute little puppies on here. So we've got with the bow, the sunglasses, and then that really cute headband there as well, but it makes a great little topper to your cards and projects. So have a look at some of the papers that's in the pack and see if you can fussy cut any of those out just to have it as your embellishment on the top of your cards. I think it worked really nicely, and then I just added those same little Nuvo drops in that as well, but you can see that the card design is exactly the same. There was a couple, because these are slightly bigger, I got less out of a strip, meaning then that I didn't quite have enough from the A4 piece of patterned paper to do all of these. So you can see I brought in 4 other pieces of patterned paper here just from my scraps from creating our first card, and basically I just mix and match these in. Again, they are still a set of cards, they don't have to be exactly the same. If you need to add in some scraps somewhere else, that is perfectly fine. And what I really love is this dog patterned paper down here as well. I think it works really, really nicely. So this was the first one that I created, just to show you this one's a little bit different. So here we don't have the gap in between our 3 panels like we do on this card design here. I obviously much prefer this because it gives you the gap, but then I don't hate this either. This was because I got my measurements wrong with these when I scaled up for these cards to my first cards, but you know, it's still a really lovely card. I wasn't going to bin it or not finish it because, you know, someone might think that that's just the way that card design needed to be, and I do like having this strip here as well, because it does just break up those patterns a little bit. Now some of these have the sentiment a little bit lower on the strip than other cards. I basically put the stamp into my stamping platform because I didn't know how well it would stamp onto the textured side of this coloured card, so I popped it in there, and obviously you can just see where the strip is just marginally in a different place to those, so it is slightly higher or lower than some of the others, but again I'm perfectly happy with that. But I really love how these came out. I think these ones, to be honest, are my favourite out of the 2, mainly because I just think these dogs are just so stinking cute. But yeah, I absolutely had so much fun using this puppy love paper pad. Like I said, it is on sale on my Etsy shop now for you to purchase, and because I had a couple of sheets left over, I did decide to get my We Are Memory Keepers 1, 2, 3 punch board out, and I made a couple of envelopes as well. So some of these patterns are going to lend themselves a lot better to creating envelopes with, because it doesn't have a direction like this one, whereas something like this, even though you do have a couple of these here which are the right way round, but you know, you can look at them sort of in different ways, but because it's going in all different directions, it does still work. If you used a pattern maybe like this, because when you make it, it ends up on the sort of a diagonal, a pattern like this is going to be offset centered, so it might not look as good. So you want to find those patterns that don't have a direction, and they are going to work perfectly to create your envelopes. And there we have it. Just imagine getting that through the post. I think that is going to be so stinking cute. So yeah, out of my pack of paper here, we've created a bunch of cards. I've still got some left over, and we created 2 super fun envelopes as well. So I'm really enjoying using this sheet load of cards. Hopefully we're going to have more of these to come in the future. Possibly this could be using the monthly designs. It could be that we create those with each of our paper pads that come out every month, so you can see the papers in action and also see what sheet load of designs we've got for that particular month. So that's going to be it for this video. So if you did enjoy it, please leave me a comment down below. Please give this video a thumbs up as well. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, that's it for this video. So thanks very much for watching, and happy crafting.